Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.
And welcome in to This Week in Arsenal, episode 37. I am Sham at Shamsdale, aka Jude Bellingsham. And like I said, you can follow me at Shamsdale on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. It is episode 37 of the This Week in Arsenal podcast, and we are here to talk about a pretty thrilling win against Luton, which is not what I expected to say a couple days ago. But it was very intense, hard fought 4-3 win, required a 97th minute winner. So I've got two illustrious guests here with me to chat about that. First is Curran, who you can follow on Twitter or X at CurranBOP. Curran, how are you doing, sir?
I'm all right. Just about recovered, but we're here. We're good.
Yeah. And then we've also got Matt at MattJAFC. Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Especially good after last night, which we'll get into, but very good, thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have both of you back on the show. Obviously, both of you guys are return guests, and we don't have Sash with us today. He'll probably miss the next couple episodes, just not feeling super well. But he'll be around, and hopefully he should be back soon. But let's dive into the match because that's what we're all here to talk about. Again, like I said, we went to Luton Town yesterday. Was supposed to be, or was projected to be, a fairly straightforward win, and it turned into anything but that, and really required us to take things up to another gear and to kind of dig deep within ourselves to get the win. But before we talk about the play and some of the tactical aspects and the individual performances that I think were very pivotal for that match, I think, unfortunately, it's probably for the best. So we just really quickly cover, the refereeing and, some incidents that happened there and kind of at the end of the match. So, I think, Matt, I'll turn to you first. We had, I forget the name of this guy. He's so new, but it was his first match refereeing Arsenal. Really seemed to just let Luton get away with a lot of challenges over the course of the match. There were plenty of yellow card offenses that I saw. There were, there were multiple handballs in the box. Whether or not they were actually handballs, I guess is subjective. There definitely was a twofer penalty later on in the match where Gabriel was kind of pulled down, and Saka was tackled in the box as well. So I just, I said something to the effect yesterday, the fact that I think referees in England kind of serve as equalizers more than objective arbiters of the rules. And I just wanted to see if you maybe agree with that statement and what you made of the referee's general performance throughout the match yesterday.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think, as you say, him being the first time he's refereed Arsenal, I think Luton away, what you're expecting from a refereeing perspective is probably to give quite a few free kicks to the home side, which is just the reality of it, I feel like, with, the crowd's influence, which definitely played a part, just the general factor of it. And I think there was the one penalty shout with Gabriel, which is the pretty conclusive one. I think we've seen a lot softer given. And if that got given, it doesn't get overturned, which I think it's quite a stupid thing in football because all it takes is the referee to think it's a penalty there, but then maybe he'll see it back in a few minutes and think it's not a penalty. So a bit irritating with that one, but got the win regardless. And yeah, the free kicks, as I say, it's a bit irritating. I felt like they were especially targeting Martinelli in the early stages. He was getting kicked a lot, and it's frustrating to see. And I think you can dictate momentum when you do give free kicks to one side, but I wouldn't say that's what happened in that game. But in general, I don't think there's too much to talk about from the refereeing perspective, other than just the fact Arteta gets a booking in the last seconds of the game for it's just infuriating. He got a second yellow for over celebrating, is how they put it. And I think I tweeted something like it's one of the worst decisions of the season. And of course, you'll look at a bunch of other decisions and you'll be like, oh, that's a lot worse. But it's what it means for football. Well, not that it means too much, because it's probably a one and done, how it's been with Mikel. But if it is a precedent they go by, then what it means for football is worrying. A manager getting booked a very, very small technical area, celebrating a last second winner is unbelievable. But it's irritating. But got the win, and thankfully it didn't cost us on this occasion with the Gabriel one. Other than that, it was just annoying. As I say, you kind of expect it to be how it is with free kicks at Luton.
Yeah. I think aside from the penalty that was given, and I think there were definitely a few challenges, especially by Luton center forward, I thought were kind of ridiculous. But aside from that, it's I don't think it's the most poorly refereed match I've ever seen or anything like that. But you're right, it's definitely that yellow card and subsequent ban against when we go to Aston Villa for Mikel Arteta that I think is the most important and the most infuriating aspect of the refereeing from yesterday. And before I give my thoughts, Curran, I just want to get your take on on that specific situation with Arteta, and whether you think that was fair or ridiculous, and like if you also worry about the potential impacts, like Matt said, that it could have on football moving forward.
I don't care about the implications moving forward. I don't care. The fact is that again and again and again, there is no consistency in the refereeing in this league. I don't give a shit about any of the. I don't give a shit about United, refereeing result. I don't give a shit about Spurs refereeing. All I want is if you do something in one match, you do it in the next match. The Højlund one in the United derby, in the Manchester derby, perfect example. Guy barely basically tugs on his shirt, and he gets gives away a penalty. Gabriel's arm is pulled, nothing, and he's got two hands on his arm. Mm-hmm. No penalty. Okay, fine. The one before that, look, does Saka run into him? Does he clatter Saka? I can see both arguments. I can understand if there's some confusion there. I don't mind that. But if you're going to say that Højlund barely touching Rodri is a penalty, then what the hell was that? And as for Arteta, we've seen managers literally run on, even this season. I think De Zerbi did it. Ran to the crowd, but almost fell over in doing so. Trying to celebrate. I think it was a winner. I can't remember who against. This season, not last season. This season, nothing. However, Mikel barely steps on the pitch and it's over celebrating in a yellow. Doesn't make any sense. So miss me with the but you didn't complain about when it was this. I don't care. Why should I care? Because you don't care. You don't care when it's us. So why should I care about you? It doesn't matter. It's a simple fact. And the thing is, in the past, I've been like, oh, okay, look, this decision went for us and it didn't go. No one gives us the same energy. So why should I care? You tell me why I care, and I'll start caring. But until then, I don't give a shit. Seriously, all I want is good decisions for Arsenal now, because no one else does the same for us. If you started to come out, people saying, "Oh, look, Gabriel should have had a penalty," I'll have a conversation with you. If you're not going to do that, then why should I give a shit? So that's that simple.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I kind of tend to agree with the point that this probably doesn't have implications moving forward. I think this is probably a one and done kind of decision. I just think the FA doesn't like Mikel Arteta, to be pretty straightforward about it. I think he is calling them out without much hesitation, and he's very open about the fact that he thinks they can be better. and the FA and the PGMOL have obviously taken issue with that, in my opinion, and are now just finding whatever opportunities they can to inflict punishment on him for that, which, is not what an objective arbiter of the rules should be doing. But yeah, I think they stitched him up a little bit with this yellow card, and we're going to miss him when we go to Aston Villa. We'll see what happens. As a result of his comments at Newcastle. But yeah, I think the whole thing honestly is pretty disgraceful. And that De Zerbi video is making the rounds, and
It was at the
nothing
City
happened for
ground, I
that.
just checked. It
Yeah.
was at the City ground, yeah. It's just, I don't know.
I'd say the only difference with the De Zerbi one, if I remember correctly, was when the game was over. But that shouldn't have any difference with scoring a goal where the play, like a manager coming onto the pitch, if you're going by that logic, has no impact on the game. Just like, De Zerbi running onto the pitch at the end of the game. I just think you can't keep things robotic. You can't gatekeep emotions. This is fans, this is managers, this is anyone involved. Doesn't matter who it's against. You score a last minute winner, you celebrate it. It doesn't matter what people on Twitter want to tell you. Celebrate it.
Yeah, no, I think it's the worst faith to tell people not to celebrate last minute goals. You're absolutely right. And
It's not like he
that's kind of the
ran
thing
into
that
the pitch. Like he took a couple of steps inside the pitch and went back, and the pitch is so close to the stand. It's not like he's gone running out from his dugout. It's very tight. So literally he's taking like a step onto the pitch when the ball isn't in play. Sue him. I don't know what you want to do. I don't know. It's just very strange.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and we're not going to see a call like that again. I mean, unless they want to do it to Arteta again at some point in the future. But nothing new when we say that the refereeing standards in the Premier League are just absolutely in the gutter right now. But
I think one other problem, just before we move away from referees as well, is I think when you think about it, any kind of decision for any team can get given, and referees will find a way to justify it. Once you realise that, you almost just start to question everything about referees and about the, I guess, authority of the decisions. Because hypothetically, they could give a penalty for a foul, like the Rodri Højlund one, for example. Obviously, the fact that got overturned is even worse, but they could give a foul for that and say, oh, but he's tugged him a bit. He's impacted him getting to the ball. Next time, as we've seen with Gabriel, they can ignore that being the case. But if they want to, nothing is stopping them from being like, okay, this is a penalty because we justify that X and Y is what's happened in this scenario. And that's why I think consistency is so bad as well with the Premier League. And I think time wasting as well. The start of the season, they looked like they were going to put a big clamp down on it. Players got sent off, I think, a Fulham one against us. I think it was Bassi and Tomiyasu got a red card, of course, against Crystal Palace. And we've not really seen players get booked for that or asking for yellow. So I think with what Curran said, consistency is such a problem. I hate talking about referees, like primarily. And I thought just because we'll move away from it, I think it's a big thing to bring up. You can't have consistency when they'll be able to just justify anything which happens on any occasion.
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest problem, is that you just never really know when they're going to get the cards out or when they're even going to make a call, just because there's no set precedent anymore for how they do things. But yeah, I don't know. I'm so tired of talking about referees. I have a 30-minute video about that coming out later this week, and like ever since then, I'm just I'm done talking about it. It's just, yeah, it's not going to change. But one thing that maybe should change is perhaps David Raya's standing in the team and whether or not he's a starter. He had an interesting performance against Luton. I'm not sure how big to go on the whole, he was our biggest problem and he needs to get benched thing. But, we went 1-0 up and then we conceded a goal off of a corner. I don't really blame Raya for that. I think that was more of Martinelli not marking his man properly. But then the next two goals that Luton scored to, make it 2-2 and then to make it 3-2 in their favor, those involved some pretty costly errors from Raya, right? The first one obviously came out to get the ball during a corner, didn't make it, got beaten to it by a Luton player, and then Ross Barkley's goal just went right under Raya as he dove for it. I think that one was especially egregious in terms of the level of the mistake he made there. So I guess the question I'm asking here is, do you blame Luton being in this game for longer than maybe we expected him to be in it on the quality of Raya's performance, or do you think there is something else in that? And Curran, I'll level that question to you first.
Look, for me, it's not acceptable to be, for 2 of the 3 goals, to let those in. Like the first one, I understand that he gets beat to the punch, and look, sometimes that happens, but the fact that he doesn't understand where his no, sorry, not the first one. I think it was the first one was fair enough. It was we should have defended the corner correctly. I think it was the second one. Yeah, but the second one where he comes and flaps for it. There's no need. There was no need for him to come out, and he tries to do this a lot where he knows he can't reach it, so he tries to anticipate the cross. And when he does that, if he misses it, it's over. And that's what happened. He got basically, he missed the ball and it happened. And the third one, look, a lot of us come under a lot of come for a lot of goalkeepers. For example, Nick Pope, for his gangly style, and he uses his feet and he doesn't really have the correct technique, but he keeps the ball out. Raya's the opposite. How is he left under his body like that? Use your feet, man. There was no need to go down to try and reach that ball. You could have just used your feet, kicked it out, and we would have been all right. But, well, not kick, but like just deflect with your feet and get it out of the ball. It just wasn't good enough. And that whole performance reeked of just not enough confidence in his own ability. And to have that going away, there was someone, I remember, I think it was Ralph who said it was, he said we should have Ramsdale away and have Raya at home, and maybe that would work because Ramsdale's elite away and Raya seems to be handling it okay at home. But when you look at the clean sheets David Raya has had, he's never had a clean sheet when we've had more than one shot on target. I mean, that's not something that I'm very comfortable with. The defense is so good that we don't allow him to be put in situations where he can be exposed. To get one shot on target as your maximum out per game, and just to keep that out, and if it goes above that, then he's conceded a goal. It's just not good. It's not good enough. And I'm not happy about it. But I was very frustrated after the game because I was like, oh, what are we going to do? Genuinely, what are we going to do? Because if he's not going to bring Ramsdale back, he's just not. I think there's something's definitely happened there, and maybe it's because of the things that we've talked about before, about whether it's the fact that he doesn't step out high enough in the build, whereas Reyes takes a bit more risk with that. And I remember last season they said Ramsdale came out and said we found a nice balance between me and Mikel to create that thing. But he seems like he's got Raya now, who will take a bit more risk in build, and that's what he's most concerned about instead of keeping the ball out the net. So I don't know what to do. I mean, there are options we could go with if Ramsdale goes. I kind of lost my head yesterday. I posted that Maignan comp that got kind of crucified. But look, he's an option. There's Diego Costa. There's options out there, but it just feels like it feels like ever since we've had Arteta at the club, the goalkeeping position has always been one where we don't know what's going to happen, because obviously Leno was a great shot stopper, but he couldn't play with his feet. Ramsdale's a great guy to have. He's good at both, but he's not great at either. Like, he's a very, very good shot stopper, and he's very good with his feet. But I wouldn't say he's elite with his feet, nor is he an elite shot stopper. But then again, you can build on what we have with Ramsdale. He's still very young for a keeper. You can still he has the potential to keep getting better and better. Whereas Raya, you can't grow at 28. You can't grow an extra couple of inches. You can fix technique. You can do all these things, but the fact that he was trying to claim that cross for the second goal, you can't change that. That's not something that can be fixed, because he has to anticipate the ball and try to get the ball in his hand so he can stop the goal going in. Because if he tries to stay on his line or be a bit more conservative, he's gonna get beat. So it's not something you can fix with him. I think we can fix it with Ramsdale. And if you want to go for another option, you're going to have to get another keeper in. And then we go through this whole same rigmarole, because Raya will be the number one. And then will he stay? Will he go? Etc. Etc. It's not something that I have a coherent solution about right now. There are options, but like, I'm not here saying, okay, next summer get this guy and that guy, and we'll sell this guy, and that will be. It's a bit confusing about what we're going to do now, because every season we go through this. So who knows?
Yeah. No, it's immensely concerning, because I think with the goalkeeping position, and especially this year with bringing in Raya, it was one of those things where it has to work. Otherwise, we're in just a whole realm of uncertainty with what we can do after that, right? Like you said, if it doesn't work out with Raya and Ramsdale has decided he's had enough and he leaves, then there's Mignon, there's a couple other guys, but I think anyone who can actually come in and be pretty reliable on a fairly consistent basis, I think is going to cost us a lot of money, right? And we just have too many other positions that we're trying to improve in right now, right? And we'll talk about this later in the pod, but right back and center back and maybe a new striker in the summer, right? You can't really squeeze in a 60-70 million pound goalkeeper into those expenses. So it's really concerning on that front. And also, I think something that City and Liverpool have that Arsenal don't is stability at the goalkeeping position, right? Yes, we're trying, I think Raya has traits similar to Ederson and similar to Alisson in that, he's really good on the ball. He can function as something of a center back in possession. But if we're constantly chopping and changing the goalkeeper, then I think that increases uncertainty for the back line. I think that increases uncertainty, throughout the team, and it decreases the consistency of our style of play. Whereas with Liverpool and City, who's going to be in the goal until the day they leave, and I think that's unfortunately a disadvantage for us. But Matt, what are your thoughts on the Raya performance and kind of what this means for the whole goalkeeper conversation at Arsenal?
It's problematic, to be honest. And the reason it's problematic is sustainability. If it was just one off game, it would be completely like, okay, he's looked quite good recently, but Luton away, for whatever reason, a few goals, his fault, could have cost us. But if that's a complete anomaly, fair enough. But crosses, primarily, is the biggest problem. You look at even the Newcastle one where, obviously, the shambolic refereeing decision and whatever, but Raya did completely miss the ball there for what should have been a relatively simple claim. Obviously, the Mudryk goal, I think I would excuse of him in terms of the mistakes he's made, because that type of freak goal can happen. Obviously, you don't want it to happen. It's not consistent to happen, but I've seen crazy goals like that. I think a West Ham player did it against Edouard Mendy actually a few years ago. It happens. Football can be like that. But the goals we conceded last night were just pretty infuriating, to be honest. And it did make the game about 50 times harder than it needed to be realistically. We had the game in a pretty comfortable point. Okay, you could say first 20 were a bit slow. Obviously, we'll get onto the actual game shortly. And, didn't start the second half incredibly quickly. But, what Curran said about us having one shot on target, or having any more than one shot on target and there's no clean sheet, is a pretty concerning one. And I think the problem is with the goalkeeping stuff is two things. I think it's hard to pinpoint why, but we've kind of gone from having two top quality keepers to two keepers who all of a sudden seem relatively flawed in multiple ways or don't seem settled anymore. And I think it's, you say with under Arteta, it's always been a bit of a guessing game about who's going to play in goal. I don't personally think that was helped by when Raya did join. He said that Ramsdale and Raya were going to rotate. That sounds like a ludicrous thing to do in general, but City have done it a few times, particularly in the Cup. Ortega plays a lot. Brighton, De Zerbi have actually done it. So rotating keepers unsettles, the defense or whatever else, or, it's something you'd have to get used to, but it's just not happening. Like, it's clear Arteta wants a number one, and that's it. So then that raises the question that did something happen with Ramsdale? Is he just not, obviously, the stuff we've spoken about with him on the ball or his starting position, etc. Maybe last season people alluded to with some of the mistakes, but I think that would also be pretty harsh considering how well he did do in games too. You're in a position now where even if you look at the most elite keepers or the ones who have been bought for the most amount of money, Onana's probably best case in point. He was bought for 60 odd million, and he was pretty much, I'd say, viewed as one of the best options on the market. And it's not started so prettily for him. And you've got Mainan, who always has injury problems and would cost a lot of money. So you've got a lot of different factors. And then if you take away Mainan, who's the only exceptional option on the market for me, you then go back into that position of, do you get someone who's of a Raya or a Ramsdale level and hope that they thrive? But then you're at a point where Ramsdale's 25 and, he was, for me, there was continuous improvement season on season. So now you're in a point where you risk creating more controversy in a position, well, not risk, raising a lot more controversy in a position, setting a bit of a blueprint for teams that Raya in the air can be questionable and can be got at, especially from corners, which is problematic because it creates an error we don't need to have, and then creates another question in the transfer market. If Ramsdale does leave, do we get a young prospect goalkeeper? Do we? Does whoever we sign hypothetically now fancy their chances of taking over Raya because of how it's been with Leno, Martinez, Ramsdale, now Raya? Does it not seem like a continuous thing? So there's quite a few questions now. I feel like we have ourselves, and I think on the actual goals we conceded, the first one, as we've said, more of a defensive, not mishap, just poor goal to concede, whatever, move on. Second goal was completely inexcusable for me, and that's the one which sets the bad precedent. And the third one is, it's frustrating, but I think if that was an isolated mistake, you'd be frustrated, but it wouldn't be that bad. But I feel like the second one, obviously the third one, don't get me wrong, is a really bad error. But I think it's just the principle of the second one, which just infuriates me quite a bit. And it does worry me as well. And as I say, if you do want to go back into that keeper market, do you then end up unsettling Raya? There's no real standout candidate who you're like, okay, we'll pay 50, 60 million on you. Maybe they turn out just as good as Ramsdale or Raya. And there's two sides as well to having a ridiculously good defence. I think the lowest save percentages in the league I saw earlier are Raya and Edison. And there's two sides to having a ridiculously good defence. You've got one side where it's like, wow, keeper has very little to do. But you've got another side that Raya's come from Brentford where, they're a brilliant team and they're really well organised, etc. But he would be saving quite a bit. He wouldn't be used to this style at all. Whereas at Arsenal, we've hardly conceded more, or we've conceded very, very few shots on goal as a whole. And that's something new for him to potentially bed in. Maybe that's the early start of it, but Arsenal can't afford for that to, halt them in general, because on another day that ends 3-3 and it's 2 points dropped. And unfortunately, the blame is obvious, I'm afraid. So it's quite a few questions I feel like Arsenal now have, which was, I don't want to say avoidable, because if Arteta thought Ramsdale or Raya was better than Ramsdale, then fair enough. I just think saying it publicly, not in those exact words, but not like dodging the idea or putting across that there could be two questions, I think that would have gone better. But it's a bit of a confusing situation now, I'd say.
Yeah. It's just, it just feels like we're back to, square one, right? With this whole thing. It feels like we tried to solve the problem and now we have two problems instead of one. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe Raya gets better. Maybe, Arteta and Iñaki Kenya, can work on it in the training ground with him. But it's been a pretty mixed start for Raya so far, and that really showed, especially yesterday. It feels like, well, not feels like, he did have a string of really impressive games leading up to this point, and then he just kind of it feels like he's squandered all that goodwill, which is really disappointing. But aside from Raya, were there any other performances or any other reasons that you think that Luton were able to be so competitive on this day? Is there something that we did that let them back into the game? Is there something that they did in particular that really gave them a leg up over us? And Matt, I'll leave that question to you first.
I think logically, for me, when we went 1-0 up against that Luton team, I think we started relatively slowly in the first 20 minutes. And that was, I'd say, probably more testament to Luton than us. I think we could have been quicker. We kind of didn't really know what we were expecting for some reason in terms of players thought they had more touches on the ball. But quickly that did change. So it's hard to really attribute blame anywhere else, because you could even argue, I feel like once it went to 1-1, obviously it was quickly after the 1-0, I thought we played a lot better than before we opened the scoring. And obviously you could say that's game state as well. But generally speaking, I think when you go 1-0 up at Luton, with how Arsenal have been defensively, you think, okay, 1-0, Luton, go forward a bit. They try to create a few chances. Arsenal catch them on the break potentially. Maybe they score in a different fashion, like Gabriel Jesus' shot, which happened a few minutes after our first goal. Just something, whatever happens, you think Arsenal just go on and win the game relatively comfortable. And also respect to Luton. So, you could also think that the game ends 1-0 or just 2-0, or maybe Luton nick a goal. But for the game to be how it was, I'm afraid, just due to just really poor errors. And you don't want to pile it on Raya at all. Because, he'll look at that and he'll be really frustrated. He doesn't need fans to know. And Arteta will be really frustrated and all that. And, I'm sure everyone knows that on another day, that costs us. Well, not even another day, another takeaway 30-odd seconds or whatever it is. And it costs us. But with your question of, do you think there's anything else to really attribute, the game being as close as it was? I'd love to say yes, because I don't want to pile it on Raya. But I'm afraid I think we played a very good game at a tough ground. You could say at times they won the midfield, won a few more duels than they potentially should have. I think it was for the third goal, I want to say. It might not have been. It might have just been a general attack when Ødegaard potentially could have just taken the yellow and fouled. I think it was Ross Barkley. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, I don't really think you can attribute too much other than just giving them goals, which just made the game into, for one, a high-scoring game, which it just certainly wasn't, and two, one which makes people who didn't watch the game think, oh, Arsenal are there to be got at, or maybe, they're looking a bit defensively fragile. I think the most fragile you could argue in the whole game was that corner, that first corner. That's the one moment for me where you can attribute it to just sloppiness and uncharacteristically poor defending. I think it was Martinelli, Corin alluded to, from the corner. But, that happens. It's not ideal, obviously, but it happens. But to give away the other two like that, unfortunately, it just makes your life so much harder.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we definitely did a lot to let them back into the game, especially with those two errors. I also think White's defending for the Barkley goal was a little suspect. And I will say, I think Luton's press was really impressive on the day. I think they made it extremely difficult for us in possession, which isn't really something I was expecting, to be honest, but it felt like they were just rushing us and harrying us and, snapping at our feet for, the full 90 plus 7 minutes, which, really made our lives difficult. And I think that is kind of an aspect of the match that made things really difficult, because even when we were chasing the game, I kept thinking to myself, we can't bring on anyone who has a propensity for losing the ball. Everyone who comes on for the rest of the match has to be, at least have that technical ability so that, the ball's not bouncing off them in bad situations and we're not getting hit on the break, because today Luton's going to press us. Luton, if they win the ball back, they will be straight down the pitch, and who knows what they do, when they get into our third. But, Curran, I'll pose the same question to you. Was there anything that you saw from either side that made this game more competitive than we expected it to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have mentioned quite a bit. The only thing I would say is when we were, if I would say the first 60 minutes until I think 33, Martin was having a poor game, and I'm not going to not going to sugarcoat it. He had a very good last 30 minutes. He woke up, and I think I'm pretty sure I said that in group chats on Twitter. I was saying he got bollocked at halftime. There's no way, because he wasn't dropping in, and he was getting ragdolled by Barkley. Like Barkley was having his way with him. He was just running past him consistently. But to be credit, and this is the thing I say with all the players, if they play badly, but then when they realize, look, we need to turn on here, we have to get it up, and we have to make sure that we don't drop points here. He showed up. That last 30 minutes, it was his ability just to control the ball, get the ball out of the first into the final third. He stepped up a lot, and obviously the assist at the end. But yeah, I think having the press, I think you mentioned, is very, very key to it. They were pressing very well. They didn't give us a lot of space. Things that like not being able to have people inside the block. So I'm sure we're going to speak out Kai later, but for the first I think it was the second goal actually, the White assist. But yeah, second goal. There was no one inside the block. Kai drops inside of the box, inside of the block, gets the ball wide, and by inside the block I mean basically between the first and second line of the press. So the first three or the second two, inside that area to progress the ball or get the ball into area. There was no one inside for a lot of that first half. Kai drops, picks the ball and pops it wide, and that starts the progression going and gets the chance that leads to the goal. But there were a lot of large periods where the distances between our midfielders were not, compact. They weren't able to get the ball through the lines very easily, and we ended up having to go wide a lot. And that kind of allowed them to kind of go 2-on-1 with our wingers and try to trap them. And as Matt alluded to, ended up kicking them a lot. So yeah, without that ability just to get the ball through the lines and pick the ball up and get it through to a Jesus or even a Saka when he was coming inside a bit, it was very isolated at times in that first half. And I think when we decided to actually have someone drop, nearly every time it would reduce a chance or get it into a position where we were able to retain the ball higher up the pitch much easier, as opposed to leaving people exposed in areas they aren't really comfortable in. So I think those are the main points I would add to what you mentioned. But yeah, that last 30 minutes, I mean, we'll have to talk about it, but we decided to actually play football, and that was an interesting development, and very happy to see how it ended up progressing towards the end of the match, because there were periods in that game where we were kind of letting them execute their game plan very well, and I think that was the main reason why they were able to be competitive.
Yeah. I agree with that point about Odegaard kind of going missing for the first 2/3 of the match. Not only was Barkley really enjoying himself out there, but I also feel like Odegaard was kind of bouncing off of every challenge, especially in those first 60 minutes, which was a little disappointing. But the other 8 that we played on the day, I think, had perhaps his best game in an Arsenal shirt. And it feels like I've been saying that a lot lately. But, Havertz showed up to make the game 3-3, scored a really crucial goal. That's his third in the last 4. And all of them, if I recall correctly, have been either goals that helped us take the lead or goals that equalize things, right? So, I've been critical of Kai, but I've been very optimistic about what he can be for us. And it's been really nice to see him, break out of his shell a little bit and have these goal contributions and, play a much more obvious role in the match, in addition to, all the off the ball stuff that we've been talking about for the last few months. But, Curran, I just want to turn this to you and ask, what did you make of Havertz's performance, and what particular aspects about it, whether it's the the goal or his movement or anything else, what about that do you think is so important moving forward?
No, I think there's a lot of things to take from this game. This is definitely his best game in an Arsenal shirt for me. And the fact that we've been able to say that game on game for the last, I would say, 2 or 3 games is encouraging. And to take forward, look, I don't like going into positions. Is he going to be the left centre mid? Is he going to be the 9? Is he going to be the second striker? Is he going to be a 10? Is he going to be? It doesn't matter. Genuinely, if it makes you feel better, he'll be a second striker 10. But genuinely, it doesn't matter. What matters is he has a skill set where he's very good in the air. He has the ability to find space. He's able to create space for others. And I'm going to do a thread in a bit. I'm going to get the video of the goals and some of the things that he's done, and I'll be doing a thread on Twitter later. But the theme of it, and what is very key to say, what I'm going to you fine gentlemen, is he has this ability to make runs that take advantage of the opposition defense. That's very key, and that's the main thing that we have to talk about in this instance. That is not only that he creates space, but even if you look at how his goal was taken, when the ball goes over from Saka, this is the third goal. When the ball goes over from Saka, both defenders have their eye on Jesus. Jesus is Sonny. You can go watch it back yourselves if you're listening to this. Go take a pause and go watch it back. Jesus is collecting the ball. He chests it down, and Kai sees that he scans. He sees that both defenders are watching the ball. They're not watching his run. He starts from a bit deeper in the left half space, and he runs, and he just kind of goes into the space that both the centre back, the right side of the centre back is vacated. Jesus picks him out and he scores. Something similar happening against Lens when he got his tap in. He found the space and he was able to do the same with Brentford. He was able to take advantage of a 2-on-1, him and Trossard versus the last centre back on the back post. He has this ability to find out where he needs to be to get a goal, and that's the first thing. The second thing is, for the first and the second goal, obviously not the fourth, he had nothing to do with the fourth, but the first and second goal. Look at the first goal, the Martinelli one. Throw-in comes in, right, and Saka gets a hold of it. Kai makes a run to the near post and pushes the line back. He pushes the entire line back. He moves inside and he pushes the line back, the defensive line back, and that creates the space for Marseille to take his shot. Because the run that Kai takes, they take his attention. He takes the focus of the defense to Kai. Kai leaves the space for Martinelli to shoot, and Martinelli shoots and scores. Now the second goal, the white cross, again, he makes a run. It's near post, and both the defenders collapse on him, and Jesus is a free header at the far post. So both times, either he's taken defenders out of the game by pushing them to one side in terms of the second goal, or he's pushed the entire back line back towards their own goal to create a space for what we did so well last season, which was cutbacks into the box for usually Ødegaard to take that shot. But in this case, in both situations, he's created space for others to basically be free. There's no one on Jesus for the header, and he's got the time and the space just to nod it in. For the Marseille one, yeah, someone's coming at him, but he still creates the space. So either he reads space very well and is able to attack it in terms of his own goal, or create space for others so they can take their chance and score goals. So it was a very impressive performance, and that's just the goals themselves. I haven't mentioned the fact that he was more aggressive when he was dribbling. He still got that tendency to underhit passes at times, and he needs to be more aggressive with that. But he wasn't doing the wall passes to no one, passing it out to the touch line. He was being aggressive. He was turning and he was running into at defenders. He wasn't doing that before, and I know it's something very difficult, but you see how many times do you see midfielders or attacking midfielders run into nowhere, or just run and or take an extra pass and pass it back. So it's interesting. I don't know. I hope that it continues, and I hope that he keeps going forward. We've known at times he's been a bit streaky, but seems like something where he doesn't have to be the star of the show. He can create for others, and we know that we have the transcreation mechanisms to really find other people and create goals as long as there's space available, and that's what he's great at. So yeah, I'm very impressed with Kai. I think that he's come on leaps and bounds in a space of I think 2 months. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he continues, and I hope that when we get into this winter period and just afterwards, which is going to be so key, let's see how he does. But yeah, that's what I've got to say.
Yeah, no. I think he was excellent yesterday, and excuse me. Yeah, I do like that point you made about him being fairly positionless, because I think something that has been kind of a big driving force behind a lot of the lack of patience for him early in the season, I think, has been the fact that people had in their minds what they expected from a left 8, and Kai Havertz is very different from that. And so I think a lot of people see something that isn't what they were hoping for and immediately, kind of are prejudiced against it from the outset. But, yeah, I think that's a brilliant point about kind of the movement that he makes inside the box to, drag defenders away and open up spaces for his teammates. Because I think that is, at the end of the day, almost as valuable as, as those goals or assists, right? Because we're going to be facing a lot of these low blocks. We're going to be facing a lot of very defensively organized and compact teams, and you need that kind of movement in and around the box to really open things up. And, for as key a player Granit Xhaka was for us last season, that's not something that he offered us, right? He wasn't able to, make these intelligent runs in and around the box to really move defenses around. Obviously, I think he was really excellent making those late arriving runs into the box, but that's a different thing. Yeah, Matt, what did you make of Havertz's performance, and what in particular have you seen from yesterday that really encourages you about him moving forward?
Yeah, I really liked what I saw yesterday. I thought he was our best player, either man the match or to Ross Barkley from Luton, who was unbelievable. But I thought he was really good, as Curran said, on the ball. A lot more, inventive, a lot more forward thinking, really, as opposed to, I think there was that one clip against, I can't remember who it was, but it was a Premier League game at home in the season where he had a chance to drive with the ball and he ended up just passing it back. And I think it just shows how much confidence, impacts players. And the Bournemouth penalty, I think, partnered with the adaptation and stuff as well. I think obviously it's a nice confidence booster, but that Brentford winner really got his confidence up properly, having the fans chant his name at the end of the game, knowing that he's the one who's just won the game. It's really made his all-round game improve so much. And, we don't need to lie about things. In the first part of the season, he was adapting, he was struggling to make that impact. He looks like a different player now, and that's brilliant to see. And it is that back post as well, or peeling off from Jesus, vacating into the space. I think he benefits so much playing with Gabriel Jesus, who's such an intelligent footballer in itself. And I think Kai Havertz is just such an intelligent footballer as well. And when I listened to the Athletic pod on Kai Havertz, I was really intrigued because, obviously the money Arsenal have paid and the wages, etc., and Arteta's faith in him obviously speaks volumes. And the fact he was linked with the other big names in the summer, it obviously speaks volumes about, how people rate Kai Havertz in the footballing world. But, was obviously a lot of fans were very much like you're spending this amount of money, you can almost sign any midfielder on the planet and you go for Kai Havertz. Well, not on the planet, you know what I mean? You go for Kai Havertz. And I think we're beginning to see, why he is rated as highly as is. Obviously, it's a small sample size, so I don't want to, get carried away with anything because, it's all about consistency at the end of the day. But that Athletic pod, they did just speak about quite how highly rated he was in general in football. and the fact that Arsenal envisioned him playing in the Mount role, which I thought was very intriguing, and that's what Chelsea wanted to do as well, but couldn't because of Mount being there. So very intriguing, very exciting stuff for Kai. As you know, you asked what specifically about Kai. I think just how much more aggressive he was with his running was really good. I think, the dual winning side of things and the defensive contribution side of things, even when he was, struggling, so to say, earlier on in the season, I think that was still quite evident that he was doing very well in that aspect. And he's got a great aerial percentage, I think it is. And that's, massive for games like Luton as well. And I think it's almost intriguing. I was kind of thinking about this the other day. Arteta obviously plans, the fact that Trossard started against Wolves and that Kai Havertz started against Luton and started against Lens, obviously does very well in the Champions League. It very much makes me think, this is kind of just something I've slightly thought of, not really. Obviously, Smith Rowe's injury is very unfortunate, but it makes me think that Smith Rowe's the guy who will play certain games and Havertz will be the guy who plays other games. Because it very much felt like Smith Rowe forced his way into the team before his injury. And, obviously rotation's so important. Obviously, it's a slightly off topic, but I think it's an interesting thing to discuss, that I think Smith Rowe could be the guy for certain games and Havertz is the guy who Arteta goes for maybe in the more, those Luton type of games, because he seems to thrive in those smaller grounds, the not bigger atmospheres per se, but, the more hostile atmospheres. And I was really happy with him. And I think one of the things as well with his goal scoring, I was quite surprised that he hasn't scored more in that regard, because obviously it's a small sample size and pre-season isn't, the be-all and end-all, but he scored a good few from that back post like he did against Brentford. So it was a bit of a surprise that it took that long for that to come. But I think that's what happens when Kai is playing closest to goal. And obviously, positions is for me more about zones than anything. But that is what happens when Kai is playing far closer to goal.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged by the more aggressive running on the ball. He did have that one moment where he basically got the ball turned and just took it past. I think it was 2 or 3 Luton players before laying it off for someone. And you're right in that the beginning of the Kai Havertz era at Arsenal was not great for him, but that and in the goal and his movement in the box to open things up for Martinelli and Jesus. And I think we're starting to see a guy who's really adapted, who's really grown in confidence, who, is more aware of, the ability he has, his role in the team and what he can offer, which is really nice to see. I think the thing about his performance that really encourages me moving forward, and again, I cite the fact that he scored 2 goals that have given us the lead in matches, and he scored a goal yesterday that equalized at a very crucial time for us. I think Havertz is a player who shows up in situations where we need someone to be a hero, to step up and be counted, right? And I think Declan Rice is another guy like that. I think Bukayo Saka is another guy like that in this team. And just to have another player who, when the chips are down, right, when we need someone to really just grab the game by the scruff of the neck and do something, it's nice to know that Havertz is a player who can do that. I think he has that in his mentality. I think he relishes, those big games or those definitive moments. So, that was really great to see. And, speaking of Declan Rice, obviously he scored the winner yesterday, 97th minute, the one that made Arteta go absolutely crazy and take a couple steps onto the pitch. And before I talk about maybe what the implications of that are, I just want to give you both a second to just wax lyrical on Declan Rice and just talk about how lucky we are to have him. So Matt, I'll hand that off to you first.
Well, where do I start? I think the thing with Declan Rice's signing is it's not a player where it's like best available in the market, and not only is it a position which has generally been relatively saturated in recent years, but it's a player who genuinely comes once every 10 years, maybe more. We're talking about a player who, for one as well, with that 1 in 10 years, that's 99% of the time that player is not ending up at Arsenal with how things have been in the past. But for that player to end up at Arsenal, for that player mentality wise, the fact he came for West Ham, is West Ham's academy and played as many games he did for them. You've got leadership qualities. You've got some of the most crazy tackling just abilities I've seen from a footballer in recent years. His ball, his carrying of the ball was sensational. His passing's underrated and can still go up levels, and that's what's exciting as well. We're not seeing something vastly different to what West Ham Declan Rice was, and that just goes to show quite how good Declan Rice was at West Ham. And you're just talking about a player who, when the going gets tough, thrives. And that's alongside every other quality he has. But it felt like Brentford, even without him getting an assist or a goal or anything notable, you just had that energy about him that he was the one to be like, all right, guys, I'm driving us forward. We're, Saka as well was fantastic at that, as you say, match winners and stuff. But players who just have that in them to be like, we're not drawing this game, we're not losing this game. Drive us forward. Chelsea, coming up with a goal when we seemed a bit out of ideas. The goal against, of course, Luton United, when the game seemed to be petering out once again. It's just that ability he's such an intelligent player as well. The example against Brentford when he ran to the goal line as opposed to closing down the player, which many players would do. Or even, his analysis of his goal against Luton. He said, he could have just stayed on the edge, but he took a gamble. When I think it was either on the side and then in front of him to lose his marker. He's just such an intelligent footballer, and I think there are still pile drivers or long range goals still to come from him with the amount of chances he does or the space he finds himself in that area, which is very exciting too. But just as you say, just waxing lyrical about him. I mean, what else is there to say, really? You've got someone who's just ridiculously quick, ridiculously good at tackling, an unbelievable reader of the game, only 24 years of age, a future England captain, a future Arsenal captain, a previous West Ham captain, leading his side or West Ham to a trophy before he went, which is a great ending for him, and just worth every penny. And I was thinking about this as well. The fact a player like Declan Rice is available, he wouldn't be available if it wasn't for the contract situation, because West Ham ideally would be wanting around 150 million for Declan Rice. And there's a reason why, teammates or whatever say he's pretty much the best in the game. And I'll let Curran wax lyrical a bit more than you, of course, Sham.
Yeah, Curran.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, I mean, there's not much more I can say about this guy. It's very clear who he is. He's one of the best, if not the best, defensive midfielder in the league, in the world, whatever you want to say. He's I see people say, "Oh, Rodri's better this, Rodri's better." Look, Rodri is a very, very good defensive midfielder. He's someone that keeps the ball ticking. They're very, very different players. Rodri in transition is nowhere near what Declan Rice is in transition, but Declan Rice is nowhere near Rodri in terms of progressing the ball at this moment in time. They're very different players. But for what we need, he is everything we needed. He's everything we needed. We conceded the least amount of expected goals against us in the entire Premier League. Him, Saliba, Gabriel, done. You're not getting past us. It's just not happening. So to have him in front of that back four, it's much more secure. It's much more able to withstand these tough away days. And we were so good away last year, but this year, that game ends 3-3 last year for me. It stank of that second half, stank of Southampton at home. It stank of one of those games where it just kind of peters out. I remember people saying, "Oh, this is ending 3. This is ending 3-3. This is ending 3-3," and we managed to find a way, and that's only because we were able to kind of box them in their half. And the reason we can box them in their half is because our centre backs are high, and Declan Rice is basically screening in front of them. He does everything we need in terms of being able to get these. I know you mentioned about 25% of our goals coming in the last 15 minutes, something like this. It's only because we have the ability to squash a pitch, make it sort of a half pitch game, squash the pitch up, and make sure that we can get the goals in when we need them the most. I mean, and obviously this it's not just today. If you look at for example, the United game, the ability to create the pressure, to create that corner that creates the moment of magic from Declan Rice, that says it all. And the reason they had their chance was because that Garnacho disallowed goals, because we were so high on the pitch, and he allows us to be that high on the pitch. So yeah, I have nothing to say apart from I told you so. That's what I can say. I tried telling people for years that this is happening, but yeah, I'm just happy to have him. I remember I went kind of crazy at the end of the game, and yeah, just so happy to have him.
Yeah, I was watching the game in my office, and I had to celebrate quietly so that my boss did not find out I was watching the game on my computer. But
Brilliant.
I was just running around my office like whisper screaming. Yeah, no, I mean I don't know, like you run out of things to say about a guy like that. He is the perfect player for us. You know, that he is the best case scenario for what we could have done in that position this summer. And, you know, from the start, I think every player is different in terms of when they arrive at a new team, what they require in order to adapt, right? And from the start, I've never been anything but absolutely sure that Rice is going to be a success with us, because you know, we paid the premium for this guy, and from the moment he walked in the door, he was all business. He was all Arsenal, right? And even last night, he said, "I'm very blessed. I get to play for the Arsenal every week." You know, he really understands what it's about to play for the club. And on top of that, I think I agree, Curran. I think he's the best in his position in the world, and I don't think that's necessarily a new thing just because we have him. I think he was hitting that status last year as well with West Ham. And yeah, you know, like I said earlier, he's just a guy who stands up to be counted when we need him to, when you know, when we're in a difficult moment. And yeah, just a phenomenal player. I'm looking forward to seeing the statue of him built outside the Emirates in, you know, 15, 20 years time. He'll probably have earned it by then. So, but I do want to kind of ask maybe a bit of a downer of a question here, and it does have to do with that stat that you cited earlier, right? So this is something that LondonWorld.com tweeted out, so I haven't had a chance to verify whether or not it's accurate, but according to them, 25% of our goals scored so far this season have come after the 80th minute of the match. So, you know, and Colonel, I'll go to you first. Do you think that's concerning that, you know, so many of our goals are coming that late in the match? Or do you think it's indicative of, you know, of a fighting spirit, of playing until the end, of, you know, an elite level of commitment? Where do you kind of fall there?
Last year, I don't know if you remember, and the listeners I'm sure remember as well, is we started games very well last season. That was our thing. First 30 minutes, we'll blitz you, and then it kind of got touchy towards the end in some games. This year, we start kind of slow. We try to be a bit more methodical. The blocks are a lot lower. People are trying to double up on our wingers and try to make it a game for us. I don't think it's concerning. I don't think it's something to be praised. I think that's just the way the game goes sometimes. It's just, I feel like there's a lot of goals you can score at any period of the game. The fact that we're scoring late, it just shows it's taking us a bit more time to break down blocks, and we're still trying to find our feet offensively. And the other thing I want to mention is we haven't been at our best offensively this season. We've also not had for most of the season our starting front three with Havertz, with Martin, with Rice. Jesus has been out for a while. There's been definitely times where we've missed his ability to pull wide and create that 2v2 on the wide areas, so Saka can come a bit inside and be a bit more effective in central areas, as well as Martinelli as well. So am I concerned? No, I want to see how it develops. If this is a thing where they want to try and kill me every game. I mean, fair enough. Try your best, Arsenal. But look, in all jokes aside, it's just a case of it is what it is right now. It's just how games are panning out. There are things definitely that you can take. Apologies. There are things that you can definitely take and make a sort of problem out of. Or we aren't keeping compact enough in our build up. We're not trying to. We're not having people in central areas to receive the ball and get the ball through the lines, which create better chances. Sure, that's definitely a thing. But the fact is right now, is it something that we can develop? Is it something a problem that can't be changed and can't be worked on? I'm pretty sure Mikel has changed Marston's position this past couple of games to make him a lot deeper, and that's meant to be how we access the final third in games, and especially the Champions League. It's not like we're thrifty with our goals. We're scoring quite a few, so I think it's a case of that's just how games are going right now. Teams are more wary of us, and we've got to find out ways, like we did with Kai yesterday, like we did with Martin before against Wolves. We've got to find ways to get around that, and it seems to be working. So we'll have to continue working on it and continue trying to pick up points and score goals.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest difference is last season, as Corin said, we'd start quickly, but more than just start quickly, I think it's early goals. I think what we need to realise is teams show huge respect to us, and rightly so. But we've earned that respect from every team more or less in the league that, we play them home or away. They're not going to be like, okay, we're going to go attack them. Unless if obviously your Newcastles or whatever else teams, or, potentially a Bournemouth, etc. But we've earned that respect from teams that teams will sit off against us. They will double, triple, quadruple up on our wingers. They'll make sure there isn't an easy overload. They'll make sure that, they sit really deep and really compact. And I think one thing which came from that on the back end of last season is teams thinking they could score an early goal against us, which even, the start of this season with the Fulham goal, I think teams know that Arsenal, if they get an early goal, then their game plan more or less goes out the window. And teams also know that the best time to probably hit Arsenal is at the start when they're potentially a bit, not fully ready. So we've eliminated that factor of conceding silly early goals, which is good. And now it's a case of when we score an early goal, I think opposition's game plans largely go out the window, like the Wolves one did, for example. It should have been a lot more than the 2-1 it ended. And the Lens one, which did end 6-0. I think it's such light and day when we do score an early goal. And I think that's a huge difference because, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Premier League this season, we haven't scored a single goal in, I think, the first 15 to 20 minutes, other than Wolves being our first one. Obviously, Luton last night, but before that, Wolves being our first one. I think that's testament to teams showing us the respect and us not being able to start quickly, because teams know that if we start quickly, then they've got huge problems. So the game then ends up petering out slightly. You're not going to be at the exact same incredible level for 90 minutes. And it's been the latter stages of the game where we finish strongly and come to the point where, all right, we have to score, we have to keep sustaining pressure. We show that extra bit of composure, which happened yesterday with Zinchenko and Erdegaard, which was really good. And that's just how it is. And I think we're not used to, per se, playing a team. Well, no team's used to playing as deep as we've been playing weekly. It's just something you have to get used to and find different sustainable strategies which work. But ultimately, I think scoring early goals completely throws game plans out the window. And that's something we haven't quite been able to do this season for the most part, bar against Wolves, where I don't think it's a coincidence we got a second in a few minutes.
Yeah. I tend to agree with both of you. I think it's kind of a product of the way that we're playing this year and the way that teams are tending to approach us. I just thought it was a curious stat. That would be interesting maybe to dive into that and dissect it a little bit. So we're over the hour mark. So there's a couple more things I want to quickly get to. And the first is what we do at Villa, right? Because like I mentioned before, anyone listening to this probably has heard at this point, Mikel Arteta is going to be suspended for that match, right? He's not going to be on the touchline. It's probably going to be Albert Stuyvenberg who's, taking the reins there. So Villa I think Villa are in fourth at the time of recording. And, they've been a very, very impressive team. I think Unai Emery has them running very smoothly these days. I think they're, obviously a dark horse for a Champions League spot, definitely a favorite for a Europa League spot at this point in time. We're going to Villa Park on Saturday, and we're not going to have our manager. We're not going to have, maybe an emotional catalyst for us there. And, I just wonder what you guys think about how much that's going to affect how we play, right? And whether that's something highly concerning or whether that's something that we can get away with and, just Stuyvenberg knows what Arteta wants to do and Arteta's going to get that message to him and it's just a matter of executing whatever the game plan is, whatever they decide on, and it's not the biggest problem that Arteta isn't there in the building. But Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
I personally don't think it will have a huge impact per se, because I think things are so well choreographed on the pitch that, the players know what they want to do and they know when Arteta or what's going to cause Arteta to be unhappy or happy. And I think, I'd say the biggest point of, not having your manager on the touchline is when things do get a bit difficult and, you're potentially being sustained against and you need that few minutes where your manager just calms things down. But ultimately, I think because of the level we're at, that shouldn't really be something which happens. And when you have players like Declan Rice, Gabriel Magalhaes, Saliba, and Bukayo Saka, Odegaard, etc., that maturity should kind of come within, especially, as I say, with how well we are choreographed. So I don't think it will have a huge impact. But at the same time, I've not seen us coach without Arteta, bar when he had COVID against Man City, and that was a good few years ago. So it's difficult to say. And it's an absolute piss take that he's not there is probably more the irritating thing. But I wouldn't say it should have a huge impact on anything.
Yeah. Curran, what do you think?
Look, I mean, Mikel is so enthusiastic and active on the touchline and during games. But look, I don't think it's going to be something that we'll be able to quantify before the game goes on. I hope that there'll be, professionalism and an ability to see out this intense Villa atmosphere that's going to be created. They haven't lost since we were there last in February with the Jorginho winner. So it's going to be a very tough game. So we're going to have to go there and be very professional. I mean, City are going to play them in a couple of hours. I think what is it, 8:15? I think it is. So let's see. I don't see it being a game where it's going to be, easy and by any means. I mean, they've got a lot of good players, players that we've actually wanted in the past, and apparently still wanted Douglas Luiz. So it's not like they're a bad team. They've got a very good midfield. They understand what they're doing, and they play Unai ball as well as anyone. So we'll see what happens. So it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting game. I don't really want to think about it now. Kind of want to think about City and Liverpool playing tonight, and obviously the United Chelsea game. I kind of want to kind of enjoy some football before the panic sets in for the weekend. So we'll see. I mean, it will also depend on, I think they have a couple of players that are close to being suspended as well. If they pick up yellows against City, which of course the 115 charge club is going to try and get some easy yellows to help their exploits tonight. So hopefully they can do us a favor for the weekend and get someone suspended. But we'll see. I haven't really thought about it too much. I've kind of been in this whole trying to figure out what to write about Kai, because I want to do something about Kai. So it'll be an interesting game. That's what I can still think of right now.
I think as fair. Well, just to add something as well, I think, as Curran says, you can't exactly quantify it because it's kind of an unknown. It's the fear of the unknown, isn't it, really? But ultimately, obviously, I didn't really mention the fact, obviously, it is Villa away, which is not really the most ideal one where you don't have your manager for. But that's how it is. That's what we got to put up with, whatever means it is what it is. And obviously, you know, as Curran said, it is weird that we don't have a manager on the touchline. Well, not don't have a manager, don't have Mikel on the touchline who is as enthusiastic and proactive as he is. But at the same time, as I say, professionalism, you'd like to think that would be okay and shouldn't have such the impact, particularly obviously because Arteta still can communicate. It would just be a different way of communication.
Yeah, I mean, where I am, and you know, before we end on better vibes, where I am is that um, I'm worried, but I'm not massively concerned. Right? You know, it's never a great thing to not have your manager there, but um, and you know, Villa Park is probably one of the hardest places that we can go this season. But you know, with all that being said, like you said, like you guys have mentioned already, we have Gabriel and Rice and Odegaard and Saka. You know, Jorginho will be at least in the squad. You know, Zinchenko and Jesus. There's a lot of guys in that team who are, you know, in difficult moments going to, you know, try to get everyone to focus up and rally the troops and stuff like that. So it'll suck that Arteta's not there to do that because I think he's very effective at it. But this is kind of I'm gonna try to view it as a test of kind of the leadership of the guys on the pitch because I think that is something that you know is going to have to be at a high level if we want to you know achieve great things this season. So we'll see. I'm not like freaking out that Mikel's not going to be there. It's just you know little thing that we have to overcome. You mentioned Douglas Luiz earlier, Curran, and you know that's someone that we've been linked with pretty consistently for a while now at that sixth position. But recently, we have been linked to Joao Palhinha from Fulham, who, like I said, also plays defensive midfielder. Has been linked to Bayern in the past. Now reports are coming out that we're interested in him. That you know we'd try to sign him. I'm not sure if that would be in January or in the summer. We'll see. But you know, before we put a bow on this and go watch, you know, Liverpool, Chelsea kind of scrap in the mud and Villa and City hopefully put on a better show. I just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on the Palhinha links and whether or not that's a guy that you would like to see in an Arsenal shirt. So, Curran, I'll go to you first.
Look, I initially I thought the minute I heard it, I was like, no, there's no way. But it just shows how much the like media, how players are presented, influences like the thinking behind whether they're a good player or not. Because instantly I was just like, no, there's no way. Same thing I did with Trossard. No way, can't do it. But when you think about it, it makes sense. Like it does make sense when you think about what we kind of need. It would allow for us to implement a kind of a box as a rest defense, so like a four-man rest defense. So Gabriel Saliba, Rice, and Palhinha, it's like a four as a box, and then push everyone forward for like the entire. So it's having like a six-man line of people up top. So you could have, for example, Martinelli, Odegaard, Havertz, Jesus, I don't know, Trossard, and Saka. Like for example, I don't know. You could have six. You could have a six-man front line, and you could really push that. Instead of having five, you could have an extra man in attack. So it would create more opportunities for overloads and more opportunities to get the ball into the final third and into the box where we can, you know, score goals hopefully a bit earlier than we have been at this moment in time. But also, I don't think it'll happen. Personally, I still think. I mean, I think it was while we were on recording this, is Simon Motwell's come out and said Arsenal looking to sign a defender in the January transfer window, and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. We have 5 fit defenders for January. It doesn't make sense to be to put out again another signing where it doesn't address the fact that if Saliba goes down, we're still kind of struggling to see what happens with the defense. And after last season, we have to address it because he is our most important defender. Gabriel is the leader. Saliba is quite clearly someone that is dictates our build up and makes sure that we get the ball out into the is the middle third and maybe in the final third if he tries to switch. He's not very good. He doesn't switch a lot. He's a very good on the ball defender. He can switch the ball to Marcelli or play down the line to Saka quite easily, but he's much more at this moment in time playing the short passes. I do think that there is a need to address that, and I do think that's one we go for. It could be an Ousmane Diomande, it could be a Kevin Danso, it could be any number of players, but it is someone that we need that centre back role, or even a right back, and then you can move White to centre back if need be, like we did after the Holding debacle. There were times we played Partey right back and White right centre back. We can also do that. So if you want to get, for example, a Jeremy Frimpong, I don't think that'll happen in January, but that could be something that happens. Or find someone a bit more raw, or do some scouting, maybe another Kyrgios signing, something like that. You can do that as well. But the main thing is to have cover just in case, because he's so crucial to how we build up and how we keep our line high. If our line isn't high, both these guys, Gabriel and Saliba, are in the opposition half a lot of the time. You can't maintain that with someone that isn't comfortable. I don't mind Will Walters, but he's not at that level yet. You can't throw him into a title run-in. It's not that. That's not the case. So for me, it has to be a signing that can come in and really affect. I like Ousmane Diomande, Kevin Danso as well, someone that did very well against us when we played long. There's names out there. So that what I feel is the most pressing need at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I agree that I don't think Palhinha is very likely in January. We'll see what happens in the summer, although we've got a pretty big shopping list for the summer as well. But yeah, the defender point makes a lot of sense. And I did see that report a little while ago. I think going for a defender makes a lot of sense, right? Because like you said, we've got 5 guys fit. Now I think it's White, Saliba, Gabriel, Kiwior, Zinchenko. Reports have come out recently that Tomiyasu is going to be out for best case scenario 3 to 4 weeks, probably more 4 to 6.
Yeah,
and Partey's still coming back, so we really do not have any right back options outside of White at this point in time, unless you want to play Cedric or Real Walters, and those are both one more than the other. I'm guessing you can guess which is not preferred. Yeah.
Just one more thing. The only reason I'm not too keen on Palhinha is because it's not that I'm not keen. It's just I don't think it will happen. It's because Partey's the club. If Partey leaves, if we get an offer for Partey and he leaves, then I think he comes. I think he will. But I do think it's more likely that a club like Liverpool, who need a 6, like desperately need a 6, will probably come in for him. But I have nothing against the guy coming in. I know he gets a lot of yellows, and he's one of the best tacklers in the league, and he's not as bad on the ball as people are keen to keep making him out to be. So yeah, I've got nothing against him. I just don't think it's feasible just squad building wise, especially if Partey's still at the club. So
yeah, I agree. It definitely feels like more of a move for the summer, not only because of Partey, but also because you have Elneny there, you have Jorginho there, but all 3 of those guys appear likely to depart in the summer. And Palhinha, I think, makes a lot of sense as a guy that you bring in upon at least 2 of those guys taking off. So hopefully Liverpool don't go in for him in January. I think if that happens, I like our odds of getting him in the summer. But yeah, we need to get a defender, whether or not that's a right center back or a right back, because I think we're really kind of in, I don't want to say dire straits, but we're headed there in terms of numbers. So we'll see. But Matt, what are your thoughts on, not only Palhinha, but what our priority should be next month?
I think a defender's an absolute no-brainer. I think Arteta's quotes recently as well, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he almost alluded to us being a tiny bit short. I think it's inevitable that we did want to bring in a defender in the summer and it just couldn't quite come to fruition. You don't want to just buy someone for the sake of it. And, I'm sure ever since that window closed, or even during that window, we have a list of names or a bunch of players or new players who added to that list who we think, okay, you could be a job, you could be the guy who's in the summer, you could be someone who we go for in January. This person's availability could be good. This person's availability could maybe only be in the summer. So for that reason, I think a defender's absolutely inevitable. And a midfielder, as Curran said, with Partey situation, that's probably the thing which dictates it the most. And I think what's important too is with that midfielder, I don't think we'll sign too many midfielders in terms of, if we got that Palhinha type profile, if we got another midfielder, it's probably more likely to be an 8, if you will. And obviously then you've got Vieira, you've got Smith-Rowe, you've got Havertz, you've got Ødegaard. So you've got a lot in that position. And then you've got Lewis Skelly coming through. You've got Patino, who people have high hopes for. And you've got, and then in the 6th position, you've got Oneni, who probably leaves soon enough. You've got Jorginho, who you don't know, but is a useful player to have around for sure. And obviously Partey, injuries, etc. And obviously Declan Rice. So I think it is inevitable that a 6 is signed. But in January, I'd more say that it'll be not a wild card signing per se, but I think it'll be an opportunistic signing if we get someone other than a defender in January. And that almost goes down to, as I say, who's available, but who's available, is that exactly what we want? If it was the summer, would we want that same name? And I think that's an important thing to consider. Whereas with the defender, I think it will very much be a case of bringing in one of the players on the list, as Karen mentioned, with Danso, etc. I think Diomande would, if that was to happen, it'll be in the summer. I just can't see us paying a release clause or a lot of money for a young defender in January. So, yeah, ultimately, just the defender is a no-brainer, and I'd be absolutely shocked if we didn't sign one in January. And then in the summer is probably when the midfielder and other stuff like that happens. But once again, that opportunity could be Palhinha being available in the January window for whatever price, considering obviously the title aspirations or Champions League aspirations, etc. So all just depends on player availability, but a defender's nailed on for me.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think you're right in that defender's almost assuredly happening, and then hopefully Palhinha is something we can pull off in January. I don't think we will, and yeah, we'll go from there, and hopefully we can at least shore up the numbers a little bit so that these injuries that we're racking up don't derail any title challenge like they did last season. So fingers crossed on that front. But we're almost clocking in at about 90 minutes now, so we'll call it there. Curran, Matt, thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you for being here and coming back. It was lovely to speak to both of you again. And yeah, we'll just make sure to enjoy whatever happens with Liverpool, Villa, and Chelsea United. Yeah, it's been a really great conversation. It's been excellent talking footy with you guys. So you can follow Curran at CurranBOP. You can find Curran as part of the Ball Over Passion show on YouTube. They do excellent stuff. Really enjoy watching them. And then Matt, you can find on Twitter at MattJAFC, and he is on the AFC Newsday podcast, which is also really excellent. Listen and watch. So I recommend checking out both of those shows, both of those podcasts. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. And yeah, thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you very much for having us.
And thank you for being here, dear listener. Thank you for spending the last however long it's been with us. And you can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. He's not here, but you can follow Sash at LT Arsenal. You can follow the pod at This Week Arsenal. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like I mentioned before, we've got a video coming out later this week talking about referees, so that should be fun. And yeah, until then, stay safe. Watch the footy. Keep rooting for the Gunners, and we will talk to you soon, hopefully after a win at Villa Park, regardless of whether Mikel Arteta is there. So catch you later, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.
All right.